what better time to make my first power ranking videos of the 2024 season than 3 weeks into the 2024 NFL season? I usually don't do things like this because I almost think power rankings are stupid, but I do see some sort of value in them, in ranking how certain teams probably are, I guess, ranked amongst the other teams in the NFL. However, I'm going to have my own spin on it. I'm not just going to rank this based on record. I'm not just going to rank this based on how I feel or whatever. I'm going to rank this based on if I were a fan of each one of these 32 NFL teams, where would I feel they should be ranked in terms of 1 through 32? And, I'm going to try to, I guess, capture what I feel like every fan base in the league is feeling at this moment, and we'll see how successful I am at that. The first team, the 32nd team in the NFL, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. This probably isn't very surprising coming off the heels of my last video, and it probably isn't very surprising coming off the heels of a 0-3 start and a 47-10 loss against the Buffalo Bills. The Jacksonville Jaguars are talented and very unexciting. Those are two words you probably don't want to have in the same sentence about your football team. Next up is the New England Patriots. Again, this is going to be how I feel. If I were a fan of the New England Patriots, how would I feel? I wouldn't feel very good about being a New England Patriots fan. We watched our team get pretty much embarrassed by Aaron Rodgers, and we probably got a foreshadowing of what the rest of Aaron Rodgers' career is going to look like as a New York Jet. Number 30 is going to be the Cleveland Browns. I don't really care what Cleveland Browns fans feel at this moment. As long as Deshaun Watson is the quarterback in Cleveland, I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, both for on and off the field reasons. Cleveland Browns, number 30. Number 29, Tennessee. If you're Jacksonville, New England, or Cleveland Browns fans, you're probably like, well, I probably feel better than a Tennessee Titans fan. I don't know, man. At least if you're a Tennessee Titans fan, you're watching the Tennessee Titans every week, and you're like, you know what? At least there's like exciting plays happening. If I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, I haven't watched an exciting play in probably the first 3 weeks of this year, except for the touchdown pass that Deshaun Watson had to Amari Cooper to begin this week's game. Other than that, I would say Tennessee has had pretty interesting games so far, and because of that, I'd way rather be a fan of Tennessee right now than any three of Jacksonville, New England, or Cleveland. Number 28 is the Carolina Panthers, and if I had a power ranking video based on week 2, they probably would have been 32. I don't think there was any fan base that was more annoyed and more upset than Carolina Panthers fans after last week. After this week, where they easily handled Las Vegas in Vegas, I'd say they feel pretty good. And I'd say that going forward, they're going to be much happier with Andy Dalton as their quarterback than they were with Bryce Young, at least for this part of the season. That could easily change in the future. Number 27 is the Cincinnati Bengals. This is if I was a Cincinnati Bengals fan and I was in denial, because, as a non-Bengals fan, I think I would hate to be a Bengals fan right now. We saw Jamar Chase catch 2 touchdowns tonight, and we still got our ass handed to us. I mean, the score was close at the end of the game tonight against the Washington Commanders, but Jaden Daniels had an incredible game against our defense. A defense over the last few years, this year with Cam Taylor-Britt, has been talking a lot of shit, and a defense that has been able to back up that talk the last couple years. This year, they have played pretty terribly. So, in my opinion, they're number 27. Number 26 is the Miami Dolphins. They could easily be 32. They could easily be in the bottom 3. But I still think they have exciting players that you can watch. They have young players that you can watch and really, think you can hang your hat on that if you're a Miami Dolphins fan. But this could get ugly for Miami. If Tua's out for an extended period of time, which it obviously is looking like, he was placed on IR, and, who knows if he comes back after that. But this could get a whole lot uglier if Tua's gone for the rest of the season. I don't want to speculate, but it could get a lot uglier. Number 25, the New York Giants. This was another team after last week that could have been in the bottom 3, even number 32. Although I don't think anybody could have been more upset than Carolina Panthers fans after last week. You see Malik Nabers have another touchdown catch last week, play another pretty solid game last week. You see Daniel Jones play solid. He had some plays running the ball. He did well throwing the ball. And he was only sacked twice. You're like, you know what? It's not that bad as a New York Giant fan. And if anything, you could just put on a green jersey instead and say you've been a Jets fan your whole life. It's not that bad for Giants fans right now. A team I can't say the same thing about is the Chicago Bears. They don't have another football team they can root for. They're not going to have a baseball team they can root for the rest of this year, really. In fact, the worst baseball team in MLB history plays in Chicago. You're really hoping it's hockey season soon, so you can root on the Blackhawks. Although I don't know anything about hockey, so I don't even know if the Blackhawks are gonna be any good this year. Chicago here at 24 is solely for the reason that they saw Rome Odunze actually play well this last week. And there's been some weird social media chatter coming from the Rome Odunze family about this whole situation with him not getting many targets, I guess. This is a weird team right now in Chicago, but I think they're going to figure it out. I think they're going to figure it out. That's all I'm going to say, because I've said a lot about the Bears already. I just hope they figure it out. I hope they do. I really hope they do. One team that's been figured out, the Dallas Cowboys. They can't run the ball. They can't do anything. And we should have known this. Their running backs are Rico Dowdle and Ezekiel Elliott. We should have known they weren't going to be able to run the ball. They're number 23, in my opinion. That was a pretty embarrassing loss this last week. I don't care what the final score was. That was embarrassing for a minute there. Number 22, the Denver Broncos. They beat Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay. They make Baker Mayfield look like he's back in Carolina. Yeah, pretty good week from Denver overall. Number 21, Las Vegas Raiders. I feel like this is the perfect spot for the Raiders because it's like, we could be fans of the Jaguars or the Dolphins or, these other teams I mentioned, but man, we really wish we're fans of like the Ravens or the Saints or the Seahawks or something like that. You know what I mean? I feel like that's a pretty perfect way to explain the Raiders. But at least Max Crosby is pretty good. Number 20, the Indianapolis Colts. Interesting win over Chicago. Caleb Williams throws for over 360 yards on them. But they pick him off twice. They sack him 4 times. They have him lose the fumble at the end of the game to basically seal the win. Anthony Richardson still looks bad. Like, bad. And he's still not really even running the ball. So, I'm still concerned about the Indianapolis Colts. Number 19, the San Francisco 49ers. It's probably surprising, but this is solely off the fact that if I'm a 49ers fan, I'm like, dude, I haven't seen any of our players the last few weeks. So I'm not having the best of times. Following San Francisco, I have Atlanta at number 18. This is the same exact thing as like the Raiders. I'm kind of just like, you know what? We've played a solid year, I guess. We beat a good Eagles team at home, and we saw Kirk Cousins on primetime have a incredible game-winning drive. That was everything that we would have wanted when we signed Kirk Cousins. But then it was another weird game after that, and I'm just at this point, I'm like, I'm waiting to see with the Atlanta Falcons, I guess. Number 17 is the Arizona Cardinals. They're 1-2, but they're seeing Marvin Harrison and Kyler Murray start connecting this so far. that first week where he had 4 yards on 1 catch, it was kind of weird. It was like, ugh, 1 catch on 4 yards. That's a little strange. But, since then, Marvin Harrison, I would think people would say, if they're Cardinals fans, they're happy with what they've seen from Marvin Harrison since then. And they're pretty happy with what they've seen from Kyler Murray. I think they just kind of wish they could run the ball a little bit. 17 yards from James Conner. This previous game, the week before that, James Conner played pretty well, But 17 yards last week, you're like, that's not great. Arizona Cardinals, number 17. Getting into the top half of the league, the first team at number 16, I have the LA Chargers. Look, if I'm a Chargers fan, I'm always going to feel happy about the fact that Justin Herbert is my quarterback. But I'm getting a little tired of the injuries, and I'm getting a little tired of just overall not playing to or above the expectations. Now, I know Justin Herbert was hurt this week, but they should have beat Pittsburgh. Yes, Justin Herbert does go out, and they were winning up to the point until Justin Herbert left. But you gotta beat Pittsburgh. You gotta. You're a better team than the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's really all I can say, I guess. The other LA team, the LA Rams at number 15. Pretty good win this week against the San Francisco 49ers. Pretty good win. You have Kyren Williams go off. You have Matthew Stafford lead a comeback. You have the LA Rams winning against their rival. I don't know where I see this going without Cooper Kupp and without Puka Nacua, because I don't know how often you're going to be able to rely on Jordan Whittington and Demarcus Robinson and Tutu Atwell and Tyler Johnson and Colby Parkins. I just don't know how much more you can rely on those guys than you have already. I think this is just going to be the Kyren Williams show, and I'm all for it. He's on my fantasy team. I'm all for it. The Green Bay Packers at number 14. They could easily be in the top 10. I'm sitting here, and I'm like, you know what? We're 0-1 with Jordan Love. We're 2-0 with Malik Willis. Let's just start Malik Willis the rest of the year. Obviously a joke, but you're like, dude, our starting quarterback went down, and we have a 2-game winning streak. Now, yes, we beat Tennessee this week, and we beat Indianapolis last week. 2 teams that, if you at least go off of my power rankings, are not very good teams. So, but you have a quarterback that can beat not very good teams. There's not a lot of teams that have a quarterback that can do that. And Malik Willis used his athleticism to his advantage. Malik Willis played an incredible game this week. Obviously, Will Levis helped them out with another pick 6 that he threw this week. But Green Bay was functioning pretty well offensively this last week. They didn't win because Will Levis gave them the game. They won because Malik Willis orchestrated a great offensive attack for the Green Bay Packers this week. At number 13, the Washington Commanders. I don't think the start of this year could really have been any better. You were in a somewhat competitive game until the end there with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to start the game. You beat the Giants last week, and then this week you absolutely handle Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. You score 38 points on a defense that is supposed to be very good. You have Jaden Daniels go 21 of 23, over 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, another touchdown on the ground. Terry McLaurin has 100 yards. This looks like a good team. This looks like a team that can be competitive. It could all come crashing down. They've played 3 teams so far that aren't great. But the Cincinnati win, that's something that you can really look at and say, I'm excited to be a Commanders fan right now, because that's not a game you were expecting to win at the beginning of this year. You weren't expecting to win that game, period, this week. So, that's a great win if you're Washington. And that has to make the Commanders fans feel incredible right now. Number 12 is the Houston Texans. Now, as an actual Houston Texans fan, I would say that we probably felt better than any other fan base after last week, after beating the Chicago Bears. It looked ugly the first couple weeks against the Colts and against the Bears, but I would think compared to last year, I felt incredible. I felt incredible after those first 2 wins. This week, we get destroyed by Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings. Now, Justin Jefferson is going to go off against any cornerback in the league. That does not hurt my faith in Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter and that secondary in general. What hurts my confidence in this team is, we got beat 34-7. That's a pretty good gut punch. And CJ Stroud, I'll admit to you, I have not watched every single snap from that game, but just basing it off of what statistically happened, it was a pretty poor game from CJ Stroud and that offense. So it's a tough time to be a Texans fan, especially compared to the last couple weeks. It's pretty tough. Number 11 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, they were handled at home, and I would think, some of the teams I mentioned previously, like maybe Green Bay or Washington, feel like, I feel better than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans probably do at the moment. I'm willing to throw that game away for Tampa Bay because of how well they've played under Baker Mayfield as the quarterback, and I'm just willing to throw that game away. Bo Nix played fine against them, and for some reason that was good enough for Tampa Bay to just get shredded. I don't really know what happened to their defense that game. That's a typical game where you're going against a rookie quarterback. You gotta rattle him. You gotta let him know what the NFL is like. And it seemed more like Bo Nix let the Tampa Bay Buccaneers know this is what the NFL is going to look like with me in it. And that kind of scares me if I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, because that's not how that outcome should have played out. Baker Mayfield didn't play good at all. He played pretty average to subpar. That kind of worries me as well. But we've seen this team bounce back before. I'm not very worried if I'm a Buccaneers fan. Baltimore Ravens at number 10. I promised myself I couldn't put them any higher than this since they are 1-2, but that win feels so good because of how well you saw Derrick Henry play and how well you saw Lamar Jackson play. And up to the point until Dallas started making their comeback, you saw the defense absolutely shut down the Dak Prescott Cowboys. You saw a pretty good game all around from them up until the fourth quarter. So that's why I can really only put them at 10. But I would think pretty soon they're going to be a lot higher than number 10. Number 9, the New Orleans Saints. I've already made a recent video about the Saints, so I'm not going to go too in-depth. But I will say, you lose to Philadelphia at home, you had a real chance to win that game the whole entire time. So, you lose to the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm not gonna feel any sort of way about your team, other than you kept it close the whole time. Saquon Barkley had one long run on you, and that was the difference in the game. Defensively, you played great. Offensively, you didn't hurt your team. That's a pretty good game for the New Orleans Saints. The Pittsburgh Steelers at number 8. Now, here's where I'm going to compliment Steelers fans. I think Steelers fans are smart enough to know this isn't a very good team offensively. This is a team defensively that is winning games for them. Like I said earlier, the LA Chargers should have beat them this week. They probably were going to beat them until Justin Herbert went out. Offensively, they still are not doing anything that really wows you. You're not seeing Justin Fields play out of his mind. He went 25 of 32 for 245 yards, a touchdown and an interception. Okay. They ran the ball for less than 4 yards an attempt. George Pickens still hasn't done much. Pat Freiermuth still hasn't done much. It's Calvin Austin and it's a little bit of Najee Harris. They're just not doing much offensively yet. That's why I can't really put them higher than 8, but they're 3-0. So it's almost like, what does it matter what I say when you have more wins than anybody else except for other 3-0 teams at the moment? It doesn't really matter what I say. So that's where I will, put my own thoughts to the side, because Pittsburgh fans probably feel pretty good right now that they're 3-0 with Justin Fields at their quarterback. They probably have to feel pretty good about that. Now, the Philadelphia Eagles at number 7, I can't really say that they feel great, because their win, while it wasn't a bad loss for New Orleans, I don't think it was a great win for Philadelphia. Yes, Dallas Goedert went off and Saquon Barkley showed his speed, I guess, with that long run that he had for a touchdown. But other than that, offensively, questionable, I think, would be keeping it light when you talk about some of the decisions that Nick Sirianni is making during that game. That fourth down run attempt at the end of the first half, that was one of the stupidest decisions I think I've seen from a head coach in a long time. And I know maybe he didn't call the play, but listen, something that you got to remember, if you're a head coach, you still hear the play call. At any time, you could call a timeout and say, what are we doing? It's 4th and 1 and there's 12 seconds on the clock. Why are we running the ball sideways? You know what I mean? So, they still won the game. I'm not going to diminish a team because they won, ever. But it was a weird game, weird coaching decisions, but they still won. There's another team that probably has to feel pretty good about where they're at. The Seattle Seahawks at 3-0, easily handling the Miami Dolphins at home this week. 3-0 with, I wouldn't say a good running game yet. They ran the ball fine against the Dolphins. They also had 2 turnovers. And Geno Smith, up to this point, 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, 75% completion percentage. He's been sacked 8 times. I don't know. I'm at a I don't know point with the Seahawks from my own standpoint. But look, I know for a fact that Seahawks fans feel pretty good about where they're at. With the 3 wins that they have, they've beat 3 teams that aren't good, but they beat 3 teams. Again, that's something that not a lot of other teams can say, and because of that, I know Seahawks fans feel pretty good at this moment. Now, this team, the Minnesota Vikings, they have beat every single challenge that has come to their doorstep, and there's been no team that I think has been more impressive when you look at what they have equipped on their own side compared to what they are going against. There's been no team that's been more impressive than Minnesota. A 34-7 win at home against the Texans, regardless of if Houston had a running game or not, which 38 yards, obviously Houston did not have a running game. It looked like a team that had their 2 top running backs out. Minnesota did exactly what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to dominate that game, and they did it. So, you can't help but be impressed with Sam Darnold. You can't help but be impressed with what Aaron Jones has done to start this year, with what Justin Jefferson has done to start this year, what the defense has done to start this year. Patrick Jones, Jonathan Grenard, and the secondary. This was a secondary that was getting blasted last year. You add Stephon Gilmore, you add Byron Murphy, you add Shaquille Griffin. They did have Byron Murphy last year, but you add Shaquille Griffin, you add Stephon Gilmore. This defense looks legit. And with Brian Flores, who, had some, it's weird to say off the field controversy for a assistant coach, but he had that. And I think this defense is playing out of their minds because Brian Flores is a pretty good defensive coach. Like I said, there's been no team that's been more impressive to me than the Minnesota Vikings so far this year. Number 4, the Detroit Lions. Now, I'll admit to you, I guess I don't really know in my own personal thoughts what to think about Detroit, because I'm thinking about it from the standpoint of we beat Arizona by 7. We beat LA by 6. We lose to Tampa Bay by 4. In each one of those games, we're turning the ball over. We are getting a lot of first downs, but again, we're turning the ball over and we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot over and over and over again. Aiden Hutchinson has had the best start to the year in terms of sack production in the NFL, and Brian Branch has played pretty well in his own right in the secondary. But if Sam Laporta, who got injured this week, is out for a few games, it's kind of just Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. And even saying that, Jameson Williams had a pretty bad game this last week. They still feel pretty good. If you're a Detroit Lions fan, you still feel pretty good. I have them at number 4. Number 3 is Kansas City. So it's hard for me because I think, I'm not going to be shy about saying the fact that I think, and I don't think anyone else should be. I don't think anyone really disagrees with me. Patrick Mahomes is probably the most talented quarterback we've seen enter the NFL in probably since Aaron Rodgers. And even compared to Aaron Rodgers, I think that it's more universally accepted at this point. You compare where Patrick Mahomes is now to where Aaron Rodgers was at this point in his career. But that's besides the point. The Chiefs feel pretty good right now. They're 3-0. They beat 3 teams with serious playoff hopes, and they beat 2 teams earlier in the year who are coming for them. Baltimore and Cincinnati are going for the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not putting their team together to go after any other team besides Kansas City. And Kansas City has taken their best shot, and they've beat them. And for a team looking for a three-peat championship, it's all you can really ask for. Number 2 is the New York Jets. The New York Jets, I already have talked about it, looked absolutely perfect this last Thursday against the New England Patriots. Their one blemish is being beat on the road against a San Francisco 49ers team that pretty much is perfect offensively. And they were practically healthy, minus Christian McCaffrey. Again, that's the one blemish they have on their record so far. And I think if this New York Jets team that played against New England this last Thursday were to go against San Francisco now, I think it would be a completely different story. New York has Denver, Minnesota, and Buffalo coming up on their schedule next. A 3-game stretch where if they go 2-1 or if they go 3-0, we have to consider them as the best team in the NFL. Now, the team that I think is the number 1 team in the NFL right now, a team that I think if I was a fan of the Buffalo Bills, I'd feel better about them than I think any other fan base feels about their team at the moment. I want you to think about, go back to week 1 when they were down 17-3 against the Arizona Cardinals. Since that point, they have outscored their opponents 109-31. They offensively have been unstoppable these first 3 weeks. Defensively, these last 2 weeks, they have ascended to being a top 5, top 3 defense. With a pass rush that does just enough, with a secondary that does just enough, with a linebacking core that does just enough to keep them with the ability to make plays on every single defensive snap. And, it's not just that. It's Josh Allen might be the most valuable player in the NFL this year. James Cook might be the most valuable running back in the NFL this year. For what the whole conversation was about Buffalo after last year and after trading Stephon Diggs and after drafting Keon Coleman in the second round, they have played above and beyond what anybody could have thought they would have been this year. And for those reasons alone, they're the number 1 team in my opinion.